When you say this is going to be the last book ramblings of the year, it sounds really final, doesn't it? Hey everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads. Welcome to my bi-weekly book ramblings, the mid-December version. I'm excited about this one. There's going to be a lot of gushing about some of the books that I read over the last 2 weeks, so I'm excited to talk with you about that. But before I get ahead of myself, if you haven't watched my bi-weekly book ramblings before, here's where I talk about what I read over the last 2 weeks and what I'm going to read in the next 2 weeks. In this time with the little asterisks though, because 2 weeks from now would be in the middle of all the Christmas hype where everybody is traveling anyway. I'm traveling kind of not directly on that day, but you know, it just would complicate things. I'm actually thinking about doing it then a week later, which would then move it into the new year because it's January 2nd. So yeah, this is my last bi-weekly book rambling episode of this year. Before you get started, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. You know the whole spiel with the notification and whatnot. I would really appreciate it. But let's talk about what I read now. What I wanted to start with is the 2 books that I talked about in my last bi-weekly book ramblings that I was kind of in the middle of. And even though I said this one I will not talk about again, I just want to celebrate a quick success. I made it. I finally finished after, 3 months now. I finished A Game of Thrones, book 1 in the Song of Ice and Fire series. Oh my goodness, I have such a hard time with that series name. I don't know why, it just is. Anyway, so I finished that on audiobook. I didn't actually read it. You can see I have my flags. They end halfway through because the rest was on audiobook. What I did, and I think I mentioned that before too, what I did while I was listening to the audiobook of this, because the narrator was awful, but it gave me a reason to do something else. So a colleague of mine taught me how to crochet. So I used that as an excuse to listen to while I was learning how to crochet, I was listening to the Game of Thrones audiobook. That's what I'm trying to say. So just in case you're interested, this is what I have been doing. It's called a granny square, just in case you have no idea about crocheting, but this is what I was doing. And I really like it. I actually like how everything turned out. I don't know. You know what? If you don't care about this stuff, that's totally fine too. I'm just excited that I had something to do. And just in case you are interested, yes, I know it looks very similar to what I have here on the back of my chair, which is handmade, but not handmade by me. That was actually a wedding gift from a friend of my husband's family. I hope that makes sense. And, you know, since we have a dog and our dog grabs all the blankets, this one is here on the chair so she can't, hoard it. This dog has 20 blankets in her 500 beds that she has across the house. It's ridiculous. So this is ours. Well, it's mine. Let's be real, it's mine. The other book that I talked about in my last book ramblings, and I also already put together a review for book 1 and 2 of the series, is The Bone-Shard Emperor. Emperor. We are getting it right this time. Which is book 2 in the Drowning Empire series by Andrea Stewart. You can watch my review for book 1 and 2 and get all my thoughts on this. Overall, I enjoyed it. It was not as good as book 1. I thought book 1 was more interesting because there was a lot more to discover as the story progressed. This one didn't have as much of the discovering and learning more things aspect. It was more okay, here's where book 1 ended, and now we're just growing the existing stuff a little bit more, if that makes any sense. Not that it was bad writing or that it was a bad story. It was just, adding detail to a story. Kind of a little bit like middle book syndrome. I am, however, really excited about book 3 because I think it's a really interesting magic system in here, something that I haven't necessarily seen in other books. I love the world itself. I like some of the characters, not all of them. Some are very annoying. Also, something that I actually didn't mention in my review is there is an LGBTQ representation in here. So Falu and Renami are a couple, and what I like about it is that it is normal in the world. It's not something frowned upon or anything, but it's a representation that shows a world where no matter which gender you love, it is a normal situation here, and that's something that I actually really enjoyed about it. So Bone-Shard Emperor took me about a week out of the last 2 weeks to finish. I didn't have a very productive 2 weeks, to be very honest. But then over the last week, I read 2 books that were amazing. And that was book 2 and 3 of the Foundation Trilogy. So I have a UK version here because I really like the cover. So that is book 1. But I read book 2 and 3 over the last week. Holy macaroni. I finished this book 3, excuse me. I finished book 3 earlier today, and I was just sitting there and contemplating my life choices. I don't know. But I was speechless, and not in a book hangover sense, but in the way he ended this whole trilogy was just so incredibly well done that I didn't know what to say. I was just sitting there and trying to continue to wrap my head around what I just read. And it was, oh my goodness, it was so good. So just a quick summary. Book 2 continues where book 1 ended. And just in case you're interested in hearing more about book 1, also there's a review for that because I love book 1. I gave it 5 stars already. Book 2 and 3 actually have to get 6 or 7 out of 5 stars. I don't know. It was so incredible. Book 2 continues where book 1 ended. The narration style changes a little bit though. If you've watched my review before, you've heard me talk about that book 1 really jumps in time a lot. And it's basically 5 parts in book 1 that all jump quite a bit into the future just because of the nature of the story, because it is about predictions and what is happening, hundreds of years from now. So book 1 was actually really the setup of the story, and it did not feel like. So you had to jump quite a bit in time forward to get to the point in time where book 2 and 3 play in. Still, it is a quite broad timeline, so you still span a couple of generations, but it's not as huge as in book 1 anymore. Obviously, I don't want to talk spoilers. I might actually do a separate spoiler talk video for the entire Foundation series. Actually, let me know in the comments if you would be interested in that. If you've read Foundation and would be interested in hearing my thoughts, because there are a lot. But anyway, so to keep it spoiler free, right, it continues in the story. It's still about Harry Seldon's prediction story that was in part, that is the explanation for part 1 and what we learn, what the Foundation, that planet for the Foundation, is for. But what we are now getting is a bit more character development. Don't get me wrong, it's still a plot-driven story, similar to book 1, but because we are now spanning a shorter timeline over 2 books, we get to know a few of the characters. We get to know them a bit better. We get to know about their motives and where they're coming from. We're learning a little bit more about Harry Seldon's background as well. And it is just incredible how Isaac Asimov has put all of this together. From a writing style perspective, you still have those situations, though, that we had in book 1, where you read a sentence, you go to the next, and all of a sudden you're like a couple of days later, and you're like, wait, hang on a second. What just happened? The more I continued reading, the more fascinating this whole story became, and the more I just didn't want to put the book down. What I also really enjoyed, in particular in book 2 and 3, is there are some subtle, snarky things going on. So Asimov has a great way of phrasing some of the dialogue where I was like, okay, this was really funny. In general, I love his writing style. I love how he structures the sentences. I love the word choices he makes. And just overall, the writing is just awesome. And all of that, knowing that this series is nearly 70 years old, 69. It was written in 53. I think at least the last one that I looked up was written in 53. And it still holds up so incredibly well. I'm still so fascinated. I was already fascinated by that fact with book 1, but book 2 and 3 even, they're just getting so much better. I don't know, guys. It's just really such an incredible trilogy. Having said that, with the 70 years, I know some people are always like, ooh, classic sci-fi, how do they deal with situations that are frowned upon today? Again, similar to Foundation 1, and I talked about that in that review for book 1, is I didn't see any major issues here. I've read some review after I was done reading the books, and I saw things like sexism, blah, blah, blah. Not really. Except for the fact that women are not super present in this story, I didn't see any huge issues. The characters are very male-focused, but it was just the time back then. 70 years back then, especially in science, it was a male-dominated area. What he did, though, and again, you see that especially in book 2 and even more so in book 3, is that the women he put in are all very important characters. And they are all crucial to move that timeline forward. And they are all seen as more heroic, important people as part of the timeline. So again, given that it was 70 years ago, he was actually really far along with these topics. Also, if you're interested in this stuff, there are some political hints here and there. There are some descriptions around cultures here and there. Again, not very much because it is a plot-driven book, but you can see some reflection of the time he was living in and potentially the thoughts that he might have had. My highlights in this series were definitely the description of the planets and the cities. Again, not the way you would experience it today. Like if you pick up a fantasy book or a sci-fi book that is very world building driven, very different. I already talked about the sentence structure and just the way he explained things. In book 3, there are several situations where he explains the science of psychomathematics. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's just awesome. I was just sitting there giggling and being all excited about it. I don't know, that's a little bit the nerd in me. And then simply the ending. I mean, folks, if you have not read it, if you've read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've not read it, do yourself a favor and read through those 3 books. It was a plot twist within a plot twist, and then he kept adding things to it that he then resolved. I've never seen a book that so cleanly ties up all of the stories and they make sense at the end of the day. That was an incredible job of pretending that you know the answer now, just to realize, like, nope, that was not the answer. This is the answer. Just to then realize, no, this is actually the answer. Like, it went in weird circles, but you never got lost. At no point in the story where you're sitting there and be like, wait, what is going on now? And everything came together. Like all the plot lines that he had going on in book 2 and 3, all of them came together. And it was just, I don't know. You know this question on some of the book tags where they ask you like, which book changed your life? I never would have had an answer for that. This one might just have. If this is not, I don't know, I would have to think about it because, again, it's very fresh in my memory. But this is a very possible candidate for being the best book that I've ever read in my life. Hands down, there's no but. It was phenomenal. That's all I can say to that. So now ending this gush fest about the Foundation Trilogy. Oops. Let's talk about what I want to read next. So the book that I want to pick up either later today or tomorrow is book 1. It's The Shadow of What Was Lost, the book 1 in the Licanius trilogy. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Licanius, sounds right. By James Islington. And this is a buddy read with our little Discord group that still stayed together from the June Olympic readathon. 2 people, I think, have started reading this already. So I'm excited to be joining this right now. I have no expectation really about this one. It's a chunker, which intimidates me a little bit, but at least I'm reading it now with multiple people, so I'm excited to see how this is going. On the one hand, I've heard it's phenomenal when it comes to epic fantasy-ness. And on the other hand, I've heard it's like Wheel of Times and a lot of these type of books, it's slow and there's, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of traveling, blah, blah, blah. So we'll see. I'm definitely excited about reading this. Well, and then I'm going through my December TBR. I want to keep Bear and the Nightingale and Spinning Silver for the week between the holidays, because we're actually traveling and I hope to be able to sit next to the fireplace, drink hot cocoa and read those. I think they are the perfect books for that atmosphere. And then I'm left with the Will Smith biography, with the Keanu Reeves romance book, like How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days or something. Gunmetal Gods. No, not Gunmetal Gods. Conqueror's Blood, which is book 2 in the Gunmetal Gods series. And then, Do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, which I hope I can get. I tried to get it from my library app, but my library app stopped working on my iPad, which is a bit frustrating. So I'll have to see if I get to that, but those are the ones going on. But since The Shadow of What Was Lost is such a chunker, I'll probably need some time for that, and then we'll just go and see what I will be able to read between the holidays. Alrighty, I guess I rambled on enough. Well, I mean, the series is called Book Ramblings, right? So it's as advertised. I'm rambling. I love it. Let me know if you're interested in a spoiler discussion about the Foundation Trilogy. Definitely get excited about some 2022 preview and 2021 review videos coming up. I have a long list planned there, and they will start actually next week, so I'm excited to share that with you. And then I hope I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye!